Welcome to another coding tutorial, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this interactive sketch using matter.js and ml5.js. This video is part of a series on the physics library called matter.js, and in fact we're going to be building off of a recent tutorial that I did called Springy Chain. So if you have not seen that video, I recommend that you go there first, and also if you have no idea what matter.js is, I recommend that you check out the playlist. In today's video, we're going to be adding some additional interactivity using another library called ml5.js, which is a machine learning library that is made super easy to track different parts of the body. And in today's tutorial, we're going to be using it to track the thumb and the index finger positions. So what I have here is the sketch that we created in the Springy Chain tutorial. And as you can see here, we have a chain that is fixed at the top, and we can move it around using the mouse. So what I want to do next is that I want to actually simplify the code. By that, I mean I'm going to delete the parts that we're not going to need for right now. And these are the mouse and the mouse constraint modules. And also I want to delete the ground. So let's do that. And if you want to see the original one, I'm going to link everything in the description box so you can find the original code for this. All right, now that we have deleted everything, what I want to do next is that I want to, actually let's just click run. Oops, ground is not defined. And mouse constraint. All right, so it's all good. We have a chain fixed at the top. We cannot move with the mouse now, and then now the ground is gone. So I want to put this piece of code that we created here inside a class, and I'm going to call it bridge. So let's come to this arrow here. Let's create a new JavaScript file. I'm going to call it bridge.js. It's a chain right now, but we're going to create a bridge very, very soon. Let's add file. And then before we start writing a class, let's go to index.html. We want to reference this file. So you just need to copy and paste this line of code here. Change the name of this source file from sketch to whatever is the name of your file. In my case, bridge.js. And then now let's go to bridge.js. We're going to start by writing a class. I'm going to call it bridge. And then inside the constructor function, what do we need? So if we come back to sketch, I'm going to actually copy all of this, actually including chain too. All right, so this is going to be part of the constructor function. Okay, but instead of putting these hard-coded values, I'm going to actually provide these as parameters. So num, radius, length. And this will all have to be this dot, right? So this dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, and this dot. And then all of this code here that we put inside setup, we also want to call these in the constructor function. So I'm going to copy and paste this as well. And I guess I can just put it inside the constructor function, but what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually create a method called initialize, and then basically we're just going to call it initialize method inside the constructor function. And you can do that by just call this dot and then the name of the method here. I just think that it's a little bit cleaner, but you can actually just copy and paste this code inside the constructor function. So actually we have this dot chain here, so we can actually delete this part and make sure that we don't forget all of these, this dot. So this dot num, radius, bodies, chains, bodies, lengths, chains. Is that it? Okay, I think so. All right, so the last part before we start adding new stuff, we're gonna create a method called display, and basically we're just gonna copy and paste all of this. Okay, and we also need this dot, right? This dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, and this dot. All right, so now let's create one bridge. So I'm going to create a variable called bridge, and then inside setup, we're gonna create the new bridge object. So bridge equals to new bridge, and we need to provide 3 arguments, right? So what do we need? We need num, radius, and length. So I'm going to put this inside here, and then I'm going to create num. Let's do num equals to 15, radius equals to 10, and then how about length is also, actually length is 20. And then inside draw, we're just going to do bridge dot display. It should look very similar to this one. I don't remember what was the original length, but let's try it. Okay, I think it might be 25. Close enough, but now we have our chain basically inside a class, and we can draw it. So inside draw now, let's just create a bridge very easily. So I'm going to, how about we set a variable called margin. Let's set it to 50. And then inside draw here, what I want to do is that I actually want to move this location, the location of the first one and then the location of the last one to a new location. So let's do bridge dot bodies of 0, right? The first one, bodies of 0 dot position dot x. Let's do it to be equals to, actually before we fix it, let's set it to equals to mouse x, and then the same thing for y dot bodies dot of 0 dot position dot y equals to mouse y. All right, so now it follows my mouse location, right? And how about instead of 0 here, we put in bridge dot bodies dot length minus 1, right? So this is the very last index, which is the last one. And then now the last one follows my mouse location. All right, so now we know how to change the locations of the first and the last one. So how about we set it to a specific value? So let's do margin. I want it to actually hang off of the left and the right side of the sketch. So I'm actually going to just copy and paste this, change from here to 0, and instead of mouse x and mouse y, we will do margin. So for x, I want it to be 50 here, 50 by y will have to be the same, right? So margin and margin, we want it to be the same height. And then for the x location of the last ball, basically it's going to be width minus margin. Ta-da! And then now we have a bridge. And I think in the original code, if we go back, we set this whole fixed thing, but I don't think we need it anymore. So I'm going to delete this, and for is static here, we don't need the option. So we don't actually want it to fix at a specific margin that you see here, but what we want to do is that we want it to actually follow the location of our fingers, right? And we're going to be using the library ml5.js to do that. All right, so here is the ml5.js documentation page. Let's click get started. We're going to be using the model called handpose. All right, and let's see here. So handpose is a machine learning model that allows for palm detection and hand skeleton finger tracking in the browser. It can detect multiple hands and for each hand, and provides 21 2D and 3D hand key points that describe important locations on the palm and fingers. So before I go to their example sketch, I want to show you that we're gonna be, let's see where it is. That these are the 21 key points, and we're going to be tracking number 4, which is the thumb tip, and number 8, which is the index fingertip. So when you come to this page here, what you can do very easily is come to their example here, and let's just do open this in p5. All right, so let's see what this does. All right, so as you can see here, it tracks all the 21 points that I just showed you, right? But do you notice something? Well, I don't know if you can kind of tell here, but okay, first, it can track both hands. But second, right now I'm raising my right hand, but the tracker and both the video is flipped. Before we copy and pasting this code, what we want to do is that we want to actually go back to get started, and we want to copy this line of code here in order for us to actually reference the matter.js library. And we're going to come to index.html, and then how about we add it right after the matter.js link here. I'm just gonna click run to make sure everything is okay. Everything is fine. All right, so now we go to sketch.js. How about I comment this as matter.js and then ml5.js here. All right. So now it's time for us to copy and pasting some codes. So let's start with these variables. So what do we have here? We have a variable for handpose, a variable for video, and then an array called hands. So handpose is going to be a variable where we create the model. The video is for the webcam, and then the hands array here is going to actually store the hand locations. All right. Next, we want to use the preload function here to load the handpose module. And basically, we're going to set the handpose variable to this model, right? All right, so let's put it here. And then next, what we want to do is that we want to create the webcam video and hide it. So how about we copy these set of codes here, and let's put it here. So as you can see, the original size was 400 by 400. We're going to resize it to 640 by 480, which is the size that we want to set the webcam to be. And now the video variable is set to a method called createCapture, which allows us to capture the video using the webcam. And it actually can capture both video and audio, but in this tutorial, we're going to only be using video. And if I actually unhide this, actually comment both of these out first. You can see that there is a video here, right? But we don't actually want that, so we're gonna hide it. So now you don't actually see the video at the bottom anymore, but we're gonna be displayed later in the draw function. All right, and then next we're going to call the detect start function that basically start detecting hands from the webcam video. And you pass in the video, which is this variable here, and got hands is a function that we need to write. Let's see. So got hands here, let's copy and paste this at the bottom here. So what does it do? It's a callback function for when handpose outputs data, and it basically returns the results. Basically, it adds the results, which are the positions of the hands inside the hands array that we just created, right? So, all right, let's try it. Nothing happens, as in like we cannot see any of the stuff that I just described, because basically now the hands array has some data, but we're not displaying any of it. So why don't we display it on the sketch? And so now we're going to, inside the draw function, draw the webcam video and also draw all the tracked hand points. So I'm going to copy and paste this. Just basically copy and paste the demo sketch. As easy as that. All right, let's try this. Ta-da! So nothing new from what we just did previously. Right now, we basically have all the locations of the 21 key points on each hands, right? And we're basically display all of these by drawing a green circle of size 10. Before we move forward, what I want to do is that I want to only track one hand at a time, and also I want to flip my webcam. So we want to give some options. So what we're going to do is that inside this video variable here, we're going to put in flipped, the option flipped to be true. All right, so now the video is flipped, but we also need to flip the model. So we can just go to handpose here and then just do flipped true. I believe we can just do that. Let's try it. Ta-da! Perfect. All right, and then another option that we want to provide in here is to track only one hand. And that option is called max hands, and then we just set it to 1. All right, so it only tracks one hand. Yay. Okay, so before I move forward, I also want to show you, if you come to the documentation page here, go to handpose, right? And then you come all the way to the bottom, I believe. So these are the parameters that you can provide as options. So we put max hands to be 1 and flipped to be true. But you can do the other things too. And this is just very similar to matter.js and how you read the documentation there. There are also other different methods that you can call. So you can try to read this and then experiment with the different things that you want to play around with the model. Next, what I want to do is that I want to actually integrate the tracker here, the tracking points on my hands with the bridge that you see here. And basically we want to actually use the thumb and the index finger to control the bridge. And before we go and do that, I want to show you how we can access these points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the draw function here and let's do some printing of the values. So how about we just print key point. And as you can see here, key point is part of hand of I dot key point of j, and j is a value between 0 and 20 because there are a total of 21 points, right? Okay, let's try this. All right, so let's see. Okay, so we have the value X and Y, position, the coordinate, and then the name, ring fingertip. So let's go back to handpose again, and then let's look at this. Ring fingertip. Okay, so it basically gives us the X and Y position and then the name. And if I were to, it doesn't actually, so it's basically printing out values of these key points between j equals to 0 to j less than 21, right? But the points that we actually want is number 4, thumb tip, and number 8, index fingertip. So that's how we're going to actually, let's do this. Key point of, oh, not of 0, it's of 4 and 8. Undefined. Because key points is a variable that's already set to hand.keypoints of j. So we can just do hand.keypoints of 4 and a little bit redundant, but I just want to show you key points of 8. All right, okay, let's see. So what we have here is the index fingertip and then the thumb tip, right? And then the 2 positions. And as you can see, how we're going to be extracting these points is based on these values here, which is basically it's hands of I dot key points of 4 or 8. And I don't actually want to track all of the 21 points, so I'm going to simplify this by just tracking the value of index 4 and also index 8. So we can actually come here, and how about we actually set a constant variables, and I'm also going to use the same variables names here. Thumb tip equals to 4, and also index fingertip set it to 8. Okay, and instead of doing this, what we're going to write is a little bit different. So first, if hands dot length is greater than 0, so if there's some hands being tracked, then we're going to set, how about call a variable thumb equals to hands of 0, right? So hands of 0 here dot, what is it? Hand dot key points of, what is it? Thumb tip, I believe, thumb tip. And then we are going to do index equals to hands of 0 dot hand dot key points of index fingertip, I think, fingertip, right? Index fingertip, thumb tip. Okay. And then how about we just draw it out the same way here. I'm going to comment this out. All right, so it's not key point. This will be thumb of X and then thumb of Y, and we want one more for the index finger. Oh, we don't need this hand dot anymore. So hand dot is already, all right, so it's hands of 0 dot key points. Let's try this one. All right, yay. So it only tracked one hand at a time. right. So I'm actually going to delete this. And then what we want is that we basically just want to change the bridge position, the position of the first and the last ball here to be the position of our thumb. So I'm going to copy and paste, this in here. And then what we need to do is to set this to be equals to thumb of x, thumb of y, and then index of x and index of y. All right. Whoa. Okay. Yay. All right. We're getting somewhere. All right, let's actually add some stroke for these balls, these bridge. So I'm going to go back to bridge.js and I'm going to actually put in stroke to be the color black and stroke weight. Maybe we do 2. Ta-da! Yay! Nice. You can change the size of the number, all the variables within the bridge class. Basically, I actually want to change that. So I actually want it to be, instead of 15. Actually, I want the length to be smaller. No, I do not want the length to be smaller, but I actually want the number to be smaller. Let's try that. We don't need margin. All right, perfect. Okay, so what I want to do now is that I want to create a bunch of balls that are actually spewing out from the top here. And then we're going to use this to catch these balls. First, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call it circle.js. And then what do we need? We need to not forget to reference it, right? Called circle. Oops. And inside here, we're going to be creating some circle bodies. So let's start with the word circle. And then inside the constructor function, I'm going to actually set the x and y location. And these are going to be, let's put it in the middle of the sketch and then a little bit down in terms of the y position. So let x to be equals to width divided by 2, and then y to be equals to, how about 40? And then let's set the radius of these balls to be 10. And then what we need is this dot body will be equals to bodies of circle at x and y, and then radius r. And then now we need to add these to the world. So we just do composite.add, and then we're going to add it to the world, which is a composite called engine.world. And then we're going to be adding this dot body, right? And then now how about we just display it, which is going to just be drawing ellipse at this dot body dot position dot x, this dot body dot position dot y at r. Actually, we're going to do this dot r here. So this dot r times 2, this dot r times 2. And then I want to actually color it something colorful. So let's fill it with the color palette that I always use. I'm going to randomize this color palette. So color palette, is that how you spell color palette? So what is this color palette? So it is, actually let's go back to sketch first. So down here, I'm going to add let a variable color palette. Is it 2 L's or 2 T's? It is 2 T's. So these are the colors inside here. And then if we go back to circle.js, it is 2T. And how we can pick a random values inside an array, we can just use a random function like this. Okay, let's just try to create a few of these balls. So we're gonna go back to sketch.js again, and then inside here, we're going to create an array called circles. And how I want to do it is that inside the draw function, I want it to randomly spew out these balls. So what we're going to do is, after the webcam line of code here, we're going to put in a conditional statement that says if random, and random basically returns a value between 0 and 1, not including 1. And what we want to do is that we want to say that if random is less than a specific amount, then create a new ball. And by doing this, instead of creating new balls every time the draw loop is called, we limit it, right? So how about we do 0.1, and then we're going to push in new circle object, right? Which is going to be these balls. And then after that, we want to use a for loop to go through all of the circles, all of the objects inside the circle array. So circles dot length I++, and what we're going to do is that we're going to basically just display it. Oh, this .r. Okay, something still needs to be fixed, but as you can see here, the gist of it is already here. All right. Oh, this looks nice. Okay, so actually what we need is that we need just one color when we create this. So we're gonna do this .c to be equals to this random color here. And then we're gonna fill that color that we pick when we create the ball. All right. Okay. And as you can see here, right now, all the balls are created. And it's just like falling down, right? So what if we give it a little bit of a random initial velocity? So we actually need to add another module called vector. And this will allow us to create a vector object. So let's go back to circle here, and then we want to basically create or set a new initial velocity, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the body, which is a circle, and use the method set velocity, which requires 2 arguments. The first one is which body are we setting this velocity to, which is this .body, the circle. And then the second one is what is the velocity that we want to set. So how about I put in this new variable called velocity, which is going to be a vector object. So we can create a new vector object by using vector.create. And how about we set it at a random value, x value between -1 and 1, and same thing for the y value. All right, so it just gives it a little bit more randomness to the starting point of these balls. All right, so just a few last steps now and then we're done. The second part is, as you can see here, the balls are all going off the screen, but actually they're still part of the array circles. So over time, it's actually going to make this really inefficient because the array is gonna grow infinitely. So what we want to do is that we want to actually remove the balls once they go past the sketch. So I'm going to create another method called remove circle. And remove circle basically is going to be calling a method inside the composite module. So composite.remove, and it is going to remove, we need to provide two arguments. The first one is which composite are we removing it from? It is being removed from the engine.world. So the world composite, right? And the second argument is which body is being removed. So it is going to remove this specific body, this dot body. And I want to also create a variable called this dot done. So basically we're going to check if once it goes off the screen, then this dot done will become true. And then after that, we're going to remove it. And so now we're gonna write a method called done. And we're going to check if what? If this dot body dot position dot y is greater than height. Actually, let's do height plus some buffer. So height plus, how about this dot r? This dot r times 2. I think if just this dot r, it should already be okay. But I'm just gonna add it just to make sure. Then this dot done will become true, and else this dot done remains false, right? And so now inside sketch here, let's just try, I want to actually show you. So we're gonna print out circles.length. Circles.length. All right, so it increases over time, right? And it continues to increase over time because we have not removed anything yet. So first we want to call the done method. So we're going to do circles of I dot done, right? So actually the naming might confuse you because it already confused me. So I'm going to actually change this to check done. And this will be, we're checking if it goes off the screen or not. And then if it does go off, then the variable, the Boolean variable done should become true, right? So now it's going to be if circles of I dot done is true, then we want to remove that from the array circles. And we can use the method inside the array class called splice. So we're going to do circles.splice, and we can put in arguments in many different ways, but the way that we're going to do it is that we're going to put in, the first argument is which object or which value inside the array do we want to remove. We want to remove this index here, I. And then the second argument is how many from this specific index we want to remove. We only want to remove one, which is this one at I. And okay, let's try this. Okay, so as you can see here, the length decreases, right? So it doesn't actually continue to add up. So this is working fine, but I can't see it from the visuals right here, but the way that we remove it like this is not great because there's actually a chance by doing the for loop forward this way that some of the objects might not be checked and not being removed the way that we want it to be removed. And how we fix this is very easily is by, instead of doing a for loop here, we're going to do it backwards. And this way we can make sure that all of the objects are being checked. So instead of setting I equals to 0, we're going to set I to be equals to circles of length minus 1. So we check the very last one first and we decrement it. So if I is greater than 0, then we're going to continue to decrement it by 1. And
a few moments later.
Okay, so I actually just realized that I forgot to actually remove the circles from the world. It's still part of the world, even though it's not inside the circles array anymore. Although we might not need to remove it from the world anymore because it's already outside the circles. In previous tutorial on the bouncing ball, I remove it from the world as well as the circles, because when you remove it from the world, it's basically remove all of the physics that are being acted onto the objects. But when you remove the circles from the array, then it just removes that object from the array that is being displayed on the screen. So I'm just going to add it just to be safe, but maybe you don't need it. So circles dot of I dot remove circle, which is the piece of code that we created in here that basically just remove it from the world. All right, we don't need to print this out anymore. And let's just play around. That's it. Ta-da! Okay, actually the last piece before we end, we can actually add this option called restitution that allows us to make the ball a little bit more bouncy. And if you notice at the beginning, the stroke weight was a little bit thinner before we track this hand, so I want to fix that too. So two things. So first, we're going to actually, why don't I just put stroke weight to be 2 here, and then stroke color to be 0 here. Then I can remove it from my circle class, no, from my bridge class here. And then for the restitution, it's going to be part of the circle body, right? And all we need to add here. And how about I set restitution, which is the bounciness, which ranges between 0 and 1. Let's do it at 0.6. And oh, I want the bridge to also be stroke of 0, stroke weight of 2. All right. Is it more bouncy? See how much we can collect. Ooh. All right. So this is a very fun one. I love this one because not only that it is very interactive, it adds a lot of the tutorials, kind of put together all of the tutorials that I did on matter.js, and also integrate this other library, ml5.js, to make it super fun and interactive. So I think that you can play a lot based on what you learned here and also the series of videos on matter.js. So I hope that you give this one a try and show me what are some of the interactive sketches that you make. So give it a try.